该记得 accident 几点吗？
我也不大清楚什么 accident。
你也不记得你 accident 啦？之前你有什么病的吗？高血压、糖尿病啊、心脏病啊？
糖尿病什么都有。
现在哪里有痛啊？什么吗？
这个手伤到。
这个手伤痛到了 ，OK。Alright， 我们跟你 check 一下啦，黄哥。现在我找一个病床给你啊。
Now, usually our emergency department will see about 350 to 400 patients a day.
Papa susah nafas ke Papa?
Ya Kak.
But of course, during this time of outbreak, the workload is still increasing because we have to screen many patients. So I've been the head of department for our emergency and trauma department for the past 9.5 years. Handling of this outbreak was more than we had expected. It did overwhelm us.
Really, I'm very stressful because we have to manage a life at the same time we have to manage of the COVID-19 itself. Umpamanya pergi kerja, balik kerja. Pergi kerja, balik kerja. Secara totally, kehidupan saya berubah.
Some days there will be a lot of patients.
There's a guy down there. So.
My parents, they all don't know that I actually volunteered. Of course, they are worried, but even if they know, I think they are quite supportive because we need to go through this together as a community, as a society.
The battle against COVID-19 is still ongoing. The war is not over yet. We are all in this together.
And I'm sure that none of us have ever had such experience. But it is an experience which the whole world has had to face.
We're going to begin here with the outbreak of a mystery virus in China.
Chinese health authorities are still working to identify the virus behind a pneumonia outbreak.
市民不要离开武汉，离汉通道暂时关闭。We now have a name for the disease. It is COVID-19.
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 Hospital Pulau Pinang adalah satu-satunya hospital hybrid COVID di negeri Pulau Pinang.
In the early phase, they said that this novel coronavirus has no sustained human-to-human spread. But we all prepare for the worst scenario. Not every department familiar with personal protective equipment. We need to hands-on, we need to have a smaller group training, making sure that they do not fumble, especially if they're doffing not appropriately, then disaster is actually cannot be avoided. Do you know that when the fire starts, you are the first one to go into the fire first? Because I think this is a duty call, okay? We do this because this is what we are trained for. This is what we want to do also as well.
Saya merasa sangat bangga dan terharu di atas komitmen yang ditunjukkan oleh semua anggota yang bekerja di dalam hospital ini.
Pada hari mengundi, kes kumulatif COVID-19 di Sabah telah meningkat sebanyak 91.5%.
Alright， 小心。Sorry， 杨哥，我脱下你口罩啊。怎么会跌倒啊？也不记得。I mean， 我们给你洗一洗伤口啊，给你一些破伤风的针，然后给你做一些 X-ray 咯，好，谢谢。
Dr. Ao Ziyang, a young doctor in the Department of Emergency. He is in charge of the morning shift that day.
Tak sure, I kena trace dia cari dia makan.
The emergency department is the front line of the hospital, rescuing patients with various illnesses.
The line also tak betul already.
It is the busiest place in the hospital, where one can see all of life's joy and sorrow.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Medical staff in the emergency department, especially specialist doctors, need to master the knowledge for every critical case, grasp the golden hour, and ensure that the patient's condition is stabilized and under control. By doing so, they will gain more time for other specialists to perform further treatment and increase the rate of survival.
Hospital Pulau Pinang is a tertiary hospital, so we are one of the main referral centers in the northern region. Now, usually our emergency department will see about 350 to 400 patients a day, but of course during this time of outbreak, the numbers have reduced because of the MCO period, but our workload did increase drastically during that time.
In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic broke out in Malaysia. The emergency department is the hospital's first line of defense to contain the pandemic. It can be imagined that the emergency department medical staff guarding the first line of defense are facing great pressure and challenges.
My name is Dr. Kwan Hatai Darin Wong. Most people will call me Dr. Darin. So I've been the head of department for our emergency and trauma department here in Pulau Pinang for the past 9.5 years. We are one of the hospitals to actually screen and admit these patients. We are roughly around one of the second largest hospitals to receive patients. As emergency department is the main gateway to screen and admit all these patients. During this time of outbreak, a lot of processes to be done. And to admit these patients also, we have a proper flow, so we're having to plan all this out.
Pengalaman dari segi pengurusan pesakit COVID sangat berbeza dengan sebelum-sebelum ini in term of pemakaian PPE, penggunaan peralatan, anggota yang terlibat sangat berbeza secara totally lah.
Good morning, I'm Dr. Selwyn, MO in charge of COVID screening today. Can I help you? You're calling from KK? Selamat pagi Encik Rosli. KK Sungai Dua akan transfer satu patient suspected COVID dalam 20 minit.
Terima kasih Dr. Selwyn.
Okey, sama-sama.
Encik Rosli daripada bilik gerakan, kita memerlukan unit keselamatan hadir ke jabatan untuk pengurusan pesakit masuk ke ward C20 sekarang. Saya Encik Rosli bin Ahmad, Ketua Penyelia Penolong Pegawai Perubatan di Jabatan Kecemasan Hospital Pulau Pinang. Di Jabatan Kecemasan lebih kurang 8 tahun untuk mengurus COVID-19 secara baik. Saya kena membuka satu bilik gerakan yang mana kita perlu koordinat dengan hospital-hospital dan unit-unit lain. Dalam masa yang sama juga, bilik gerakan akan liaise dengan CPRC, Jabatan Kesihatan Negeri, untuk memberi segala maklumat ataupun data-data berkaitan dengan COVID-19 secara sulit. So, proses ini adalah proses yang berterusan, di mana kita tidak jangka pesakit COVID datang di jabatan kita waktu dan masa yang berbeza. So, ini bermaksudnya bilik gerakan sentiasa bersedia menerima sebarang information di dalam masa 24 jam. Saya bertugas di waktu pejabat. Dalam masa yang sama, saya kadang perlu stay back sehingga midnight. Umpamanya, pergi kerja, balik kerja. Pergi kerja, balik kerja. Secara totally, kehidupan saya berubah.
So as you can see, that time was quite a difficult time for everyone. We did not have enough manpower. We had to enlist more staff from other departments to come to be part of our screening team. We also had to train everyone so that they knew how to handle the cases and also to do the swabs and to follow the right procedures until the patient is either discharged or admitted. We are very grateful to all our healthcare workers. Many people actually did come forward and volunteer to become part of our screening team. They all did a good job. So we work together to try to overcome all these challenges together with the hospitals. As we get more information, the patients that we have to screen coming back from different countries and different areas, of course, increase.
Ya cik, selamat pagi. Kenapa cik?
Selamat pagi. Saya rasa badan tak nak sihat.
Okey, dapat cik. Diri depan tu dulu ah. Berapa hari dah demam ni cik?
Dah seminggu dah cik.
Dah seminggu. Ada travel mana-mana negara cik?
Saya baru balik dari overseas.
Overseas cik. Kita akan cek temperature dulu ah. Okey, minta hand up. Cuci tangan dulu ah. Okey cik, boleh pakai yang ni ya. Sekarang ni kita perlukan IC cik. Okey cik, IC simpan dalam ni. Lepas ni ikut pegawai saya ke kemah pengasingan. Cik kena tunggu kat sana untuk pengasingan ah. Okay.
The screening station was set up in a temporary tent outside the hospital to ensure air circulation and to avoid cluster infections in closed rooms.
Hey guys, we have a few patients to swab today. Are you guys ready?
Ready.
Let's start. Okay, hand wrap. True cover. Tyvek suit. Hand wrap. Tissue. Glove.
Medical staff entering the screening area must wear a full set of personal protective equipment, and each step of putting it on must be carefully completed.
Everyone ready?
Ready.
Okay, let's go. Okay, we have a patient named Amiro, have a travelling history, came in for cough and fever.
The doctors on duty at the screening station would take turns to be on duty according to the scheduled timetable.
Itu nama apa?
Amirul Aziz.
Okay, kita check sikit
Because they are the first people who come into contact with suspected patients, their situation is the most dangerous.
Okay, lungs clear.
Under the scorching sun, medical staff wear thick personal protective equipment. With mask and face shields on, it was even more difficult to speak.
Okay, Encik, kita akan buat swab sekarang Okay, akan buat melalui hidung dengan mulut. You akan rasa tak selesa sikit. Okay, cuba tahan, jangan batuk dan bersin. Alright? Okay, boleh buka mask kamu? Okay. Okay, taruh start. Okay. Cuba buka mulut. Okay.
Every time Dr. Alzliang was on duty, he was worried.
Some of the new junior doctors, they are not very familiar with how to put in the PPEs, which if they put it on wrongly, then they might increase their chance of getting the infection. For me, when I was in Miri, we have to do some disaster management training. My specialists over there, they actually taught us quite well in putting on all this protective gear and how to handle this kind of patients, how to talk to them, how to interact with them safely, and also how to removing our PPEs properly. That's another reason why I thought of wanting to volunteer myself to do the screening process for these infectious patients.
Nama pesakit, label betul lah?
Amirul.
Okay, terima kasih.
Basically, my parents, they all don't know that I actually volunteered to do the screening. But even if they know, I think they are quite supportive. So of course they are worried and they will be bugging me every time on message, on WhatsApp to remind me to put on all the PPEs properly, do all the hand hygiene properly, everything. Most of the time before the pandemic, I'll see my parents like probably at least once a week or twice a week maybe. But because of this outbreak, I purposely have to keep a distance with them so that I don't want to infect them, because they are high-risk group patients as well, as they are already in their old age. So I just want to make sure they are safe. It's not just only me that are doing this thing. Actually, a lot of our colleagues, they are doing this kind of social distance with their parents as well.
All of them are also scared. Some of them have young children at home. Some of them have elderly parents, grandparents, so they don't want to bring this infection to the home. In fact, some of them actually took the choice to actually stay outside, not to stay at home, so that they don't expose their family. There's a lot of sacrifices from the staff all around. They're all very selfless in saying that they definitely want to make sure that they do their best when they come to work. They still feel the responsibility that this is something we are facing as a team, as a hospital team, and they all come and still volunteer to work in our screening tent. And it's a good thing.
Regardless of day or night, the doctors and nurses in the emergency room are racing against time.
Tadi accident macam mana?
Motor dengan motor, saya terbalik, motor jatuh.
Jatuh belah kiri lah.
Belah sini.
Sakit belakang, dekat tulang belakang sana?
Ini sakit sini sikit lah.
Sakit sana sikit lah. Nak periksa sikit lah. Okey, belah sini, belah kanan.
Ada sakit sikit.
Ada sakit sikit lah.
Dr. Salween was born after the 80s. He started serving in the emergency department of Penang General Hospital in 2020. He is used to working in the emergency department where every second matters.
The mother not vomiting also.
Okay.
So can I discharge her? It's all normal.
So repeat the temperature, vital signs, then write a reassessment, and then allow discharge. But give memo to KK to review symptoms in 2 days or 3 days.
2 to 3 days.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Any patient who comes into the emergency department needs to be taken over quickly, make a quick diagnosis and decide whether to stay in the emergency department for observation or transfer to other departments.
I'm going to see my patient in decon room. Yeah.
So decon room is also under your charge?
Yes, tonight I'm in charge for decon also.
The emergency department is the main checkpoint during the pandemic outbreak. Dr. Salween needs to equip himself all the time and be prepared to respond at any time.
Just update me once they are admitted.
The emergency room seemed calm that night, but Dr. Salween did not dare to relax at all, especially at this time when the global pandemic had not been alleviated.
Green zone, usually night shift, there will be a lot of patients who come in with fever, vomiting and so on. Some days we feel it's quite okay. It's not a very busy day. You don't feel so overworked or stressed. But some days there will be a lot of patients.
There's a guy.
Yes.
Down there.
Saya Dr. Selvin dari Decon. Okay, I would like to ask you a few questions. When exactly did you come back? Last Thursday, okay. So you took a bus from Johor to Penang. What's the bus and what time was the bus? Do you have cough or sore throat or do you feel the shortness of breath? Okay, ma'am. There is a lot of responsibility on you to screen the patients properly, get a proper medical history and travel history so that there is a track record of all the patients we see. Taking the swab is the most risky procedure because that's when there's a high risk if the patient has COVID for it to be transmitted. There was a lot of things running through my mind. Whether I am fully protected, that was one. Whether I am doing the swab procedure correctly, is the swab hitting the right spot and getting a proper sample, and am I packaging the sample properly? And also the scare that I had when the first patient I swabbed actually sneezed when I was trying to take the swab. So that was a heart-stopping moment for me. This actually caused a certain amount of stress for me, but my family were very supportive. So that was a stress reliever, and my colleagues were also very supportive. So I was still able to get through it. The battle against COVID-19 is still ongoing. The war is not over yet. We are all in this together.
Kepada ahli keluarga saya, terima kasih kerana sentiasa memberi sokongan, dorongan kepada saya sebagai petugas perubatan untuk membantu ahli masyarakat semua dalam memutuskan rantaian COVID-19 ini?
I think for everyone, just maintain your social distance, put on your mask, especially in a crowded area. Make sure you practice your personal hygiene properly. We all get through this thing together.
I would like to thank all my staff and everyone who has been involved in this response that we've had to do. So I think my staff, the emergency department staff and all the screening staff, they really showed teamwork. They really showed that they care and they really gave the best that they can. And I think it's working together that we're able to overcome this together.
Atika, ayah tak okey Atika, ayah dah kat hospital. Atika jaga diri baik-baik, jaga mak, jaga adik-adik. Ayah minta maaf banyak-banyak dengan Atika.
So when a COVID patient ended up in ICU, we are more worried because these are the more serious patients and the likelihood is some of them may not make it. So I would say we are frontliner, but we are the last defense of frontliner.
Very much part of our routine job to respond to the unknown, to the unpredictable, to the emergency situation. And therefore, we have to prepare for the worst case scenario.
I just encountered a COVID-19 who actually sentenced to death yesterday, because of COVID-19. Definitely, I have a fear, right? The COVID-19 is actually is a death. I'm worried about my family, I'm worried about my mother, daughter. To say the truth is like, there's a fear.
That is a difficulty also to face because we will be the last person to speak to the patient themselves. And they may not wake up after that, they may not make it.
1, 2, 3, prone.
Even though we are wearing full personal protective equipment, there's always a chance that, is my filter working? Are there any holes in my equipment? Did I touch, anything else before donning? Is my donning technique correct? If I took 100% precaution, did my partner take the full precaution? So there's always a fear of contracting the disease.
Every day, we see patients dying, right? And our patients, many are actually young. This COVID sort of reminding us that actually life is very fragile and we doctors are only human beings. We can also die.